Young people aren't the leaders of tomorrow. They are the leaders of today and tomorrow. Kathy Calvin said that once. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, Episode 30, Lessons from a Younger Leader with George Penyak. Hey everybody, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's your host and founder, Scott McCarthy, with today's episode. Today I'm going to be talking to George Penyak, who, as you probably figured out, and as you'll hear, is a younger leader, i.e. he leads people that are generally much older than him. He's only roughly 32 years old, and he's leading a team. And this is something that I have a lot of experience in as well, because my whole leadership career has, well, since joining the regular army anyway, half my leadership time has been in this exact scenario, and it's still today in this exact scenario. So we have a lot in common, and we definitely have a great discussion. Before we dive into the episode, just wanted to say welcome to the new listeners. There's definitely been an increase in the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast listening booth lately. So welcome. You've come across a podcast which is designed just to give you practical advice and tips and guidance on how to be a great leader and how to be a better leader. And leader, not necessarily in business, it could be anything. Leadership's everywhere. All right. So you could be in a nonprofit. You could be leading from your family, your home. You could be leading a business, a sales team. You could be in the military, just like me. Whatever it is, we all need leadership. So welcome to, in my humble opinion, the best podcast out there for this. Just wanted to throw out there before I start talking more about the episode today, at the Facebook group, all right, and the Leadership Mastermind, Moving Forward Leadership Mastermind. And there you will find all the guests, okay? And this is something very different that you're not going to find with the other podcasts out there. All the guests that I have on the show I invite out to the mastermind, and you'll see George there. You'll be able to have a conversation with him. There's number of others. I won't name them all, but just be aware that, yeah, this is there. So just go to facebook.com/groups/moving forward leadership. You're going to find the mastermind and ask to come in and start chatting with myself and the other guests and the other people who want to learn about leadership. So as I hinted at, today's conversation is with George Penyak, and he has risen up through his ranks of the sales team, and now he's a regional manager. And we'll get into the background and stuff like that, but it's definitely a lot of interesting conversations that we have. You know, how he's gotten to his leadership role, you know, ways that he was able to mitigate older people getting upset that he was now in a leadership role over them, and some challenges and what advice that he has out there, and so on and so forth. So definitely a good show, and you're definitely going to enjoy it, especially if you're a younger person out there. And even if you're not a younger person out there, you know, maybe you can give some advice to people that you're going to mentor and take it from someone who's already gotten through it. Okay, so sit back, relax, and enjoy my show all about being a younger leader with George Penyak. George, welcome to the Moving Forward Podcast, Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. Great to have you on. My God, I am off tonight. For all listeners out there, we're just having this whole conversation, but if something slips up, we'll just roll with it. So we're rolling with this one.
We're rolling with it. No, it's live TV, folks. Live TV. No, Scott. I am glad to be here. Super excited to be on the show. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity here. So I'm really excited to talk some leadership and get to know you a little bit better, and you know, see if we can come up with some good content here.
I'm absolutely certain that we will have a good chat here. And thanks for volunteering to come on the show. And I think the coolest part is that you aren't actually self-promoting anything. You're just here because you got this message you want to share, and and you just want to share it, and that's really neat. Like other people that come on the show, and nothing against them or anything, but they do have a message. They are self-promoting in some way or another, but you just got a message to share. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, there's nothing wrong at all with promoting everything. I mean, I'm in sales myself. I've been in sales most of my career, but no, I genuinely am real passionate about leadership and then sales and the industry I'm in. And so, I've got some strong stances on how I lead, and, I just like to share that. And if we can produce good content, and that's great for both of us.
Oh, that's awesome. Why don't we just dive back, and why don't you just give us the 30,000-foot view of how you've gotten from where you've started and in your life, your career, to where you are today. A quick overview on that.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm in sales. I work for a phenomenal company called Restaurant Technologies Inc. But I'll take it back to kind of when my career started. So when I was in college. My sales career really started back then. It was my fourth year of college. I played sports, and NCAA eligibility ran out, so I figured I might as well get a jump start on my career. And so what I did is I thought of ways that I can make the most money while in college and still be able to maintain my classes and decent enough grades to get through, and but get a kind of a jump start on things. And so what that led me to was actually real estate. And I got my real estate license, just after my 21st birthday. And what that did, that gave me the flexibility to go to class, but also to make really good money to help pay for school. Because once the NCAA eligibility ran out, so did scholarship money and stuff like that. So I figured out to pay for everything. And so I gained so many skills just starting out in real estate at such a young age. And everything from building a client base to studying markets, understanding demand and supply, and then applying all that to being a successful business person. And so that's really where my sales career started. Once I got out of college, and by the way, I was pretty successful at real estate. I had a couple $1 million years there. I was making pretty good money, more than and most of my friends were making in college at the time. I mean, we were all broke in college, but when I graduated, the market tanked, and then I essentially moved on from that into the advertising world. And I sold advertising for a couple years. Never was a leader in the advertising space. Always was a direct contributor. And then I got into this company called Restaurant Technologies. The opportunity came across my inbox, and I applied, and it really fit my degree, which is hospitality management, working in the restaurant industry. And I've been with Restaurant Technologies for about 5 years now. And after my second year with the company, I had a near record year in sales. My boss promoted me into his old role. He got promoted, and so he moved me up, and I became a regional sales manager. And I was leading essentially an entire region of salespeople, and we're driving sales. And I think I was 29 at the time. And so I've been leading for about 2.5 years. So I'm about to be 32. And it's been great. Loved every minute of it. So that's kind of how I ended up where I'm at today. So yeah, I'm here.
Cool. That's pretty. It's a few different interesting things in there. One is being a realtor while you're going to college, whereas I know a lot of people make that a career.
Oh yeah.
Put out your college job. That's pretty cool. That's a really cool idea. So you got promoted to this, we jump forward. You got promoted to the regional sales manager job. So how many people are under you at this time now? Because that's the job you're holding now, correct?
Yeah, correct. So at the time I was promoted, I had 5 team members underneath me. I had 4 sales executives and 1 senior sales executive underneath me. And today I manage a team of 8. So my team's grown by 3. Mm-hmm. And we expanded again as a company, kind of restructured internally. And so they gave me more responsibility, more opportunities to lead, but also kind of expanded my region. And so now today I manage a team of 8 sales executives. One of the sales executives is a senior sales executive on my team. And so yeah.
Cool. So when you were promoted in this role, obviously you're, as we were talking, you're the youngest person within that team, right?
Yeah. So Yeah, absolutely. So at the time I was promoted, I was 29, and I've been with the company for 2.5 years. And I think my least tenured rep at that time, well, actually, no, I take that back. I did have some newer reps that have been with the company shorter than me. So I had a little more tenure in them, but they had a lot more age and quote unquote sales experience over me. So they may have sold longer, but maybe not at my company, right? So they came in from externally selling at a different company. So, but yeah, 29 years old. I think the next closest rep to me was in his late 30s, mid to late 30s, I believe.
So how did all that go over with you being the young guy and all suddenly being promoted to be their boss?
Yeah, so I think it was I don't want to say it was much of a surprise to everybody. I think it was a little bit of a surprise to everybody. I think they had seen my work that I've done when I was directly selling as a sales executive. And so I think they knew I brought, a strong skill set to the table from being able to execute. I think they all raised a little eyebrow, like, can he lead? And one of the first things I did as a young leader, because I really was kind of not really struggling, but trying to figure out a way of how can I get them to buy into my leadership style. And I'm looking at some of them, and one of the team members was old enough to be my dad, and so I have to figure out a way to get buy-in.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that I did, it was our first face-to-face meeting as a team, is I sat everybody down and I said, I'm just going to be completely vulnerable with them. I'm not, I don't know it all. I'm not perfect. And you kind of have to set the table like that. And so what we did is I asked them to do an exercise, and I kind of led with myself. I asked them, I said, we're all going to sit around the table, and I want you all to tell something and share something with the group that you wouldn't share with maybe some of your closest friends. Share something that you're uncomfortable sharing. And I'll start. I'll just tell my story, and we'll see where it goes. And you don't have to share if you don't want to. I didn't make anyone feel uncomfortable. But what I did is I opened up first and told my story on kind of how I grew up and how I got to where I am today, and shared a lot of uncomfortable things that I probably wouldn't share with many people, but I shared that with them. And then as soon as I did that, you could almost see the walls coming down a little bit. And then we went around the table, and each person shared such an incredible story about themselves. And it brought all of us pretty close immediately, because I think we all realized we were so much closer or more related in things that we have been through than we thought. And that just really built the cohesiveness I needed to kind of not only get their buy-in, but create not an instant team atmosphere, but lay that foundation to have a really strong team atmosphere.
It definitely, it like you said, it builds the foundation. It's so funny, but it's so funny how when leadership shows their vulnerability, how quickly people begin to relate to people, begin to relate to them. And like you said, how teamwork all suddenly starts being built together. I've seen it so many times, and I've come across people who believe that, people need to think that I have all the answers and I know it all. And it's like, no, not at all. In fact, the opposite is true, man.
I'm leaning on you guys a little bit. Come on now.
No, I have no answers. I have questions.
I've got the greatest questions that I can find the answers, but maybe not the answers. No, I'm with you.
It's so funny. So that's a great way. So that's obviously that was one of your key strategies for, dealing with your older subordinates. Did you have any other ones that you employed during this time to build that trust, build up that team, get them to buy into your leadership style?
Yeah. So, one of the things that kind of piggybacked off of the vulnerability exercise that we did literally, I think it was probably one of the first few days I took over. But what that did, it created a very interesting environment that kind of made everybody feel safe with each other. And I think it made them feel safe with me. And one of the things that does as a leader is if your team feels very safe around you, you'll always get the truth out of them. And that's a really good thing as a leader, because if you can always get the truth, if they trust you with the truth, then you can always coach and develop much better than that. So sales, especially sales leadership, it's a coaching and development game. Yeah. And it's really hard to coach and lead and develop if you're not getting the truth out of your reps and your employees. So, being able to lay that foundation, I always got the truth. And when I always get the truth in that safe zone, I always can develop them and coach them so much better because I know exactly what's going on. And this isn't really a strategy, but this is something I think that makes all good salespeople successful, but also good sales leaders is being, having empathy. And I think coming into certain situations with a point of empathy and not only having it, but being able to display it and show it to your rep, no matter what the rep's going through, good or bad, be able to relate to their situation and be able to coach from there. It's hard to coach and develop when you're always thinking of what you're going to say next, as opposed to listening to what they're going through and really relating with them. Because I think that'll then open up their ears to be a better listener to when you do need that opportunity to coach or develop. But if you're not being empathetic to their situations and what they're going through, because we're all salespeople, and salespeople can sometimes feel like they're on an island, right? So I think you just need to be empathetic to all of their situations, both internally in the company and externally as well, and to help develop and grow them. And that starts with being a really good listener.
Wow. So all the listeners out there, what I want you to do right now is basically hit rewind for about 90 seconds and re-listen to all that again, so it sinks in, because that was absolutely gold, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've coached people with that whole philosophy, and they're like, "What do you mean I need to be empathetic?" I'm like, "No, you actually do need to show them that you care."
Absolutely. One of the best strategies in business is caring, believe it or not. Business and leadership in general is actually, we've, growing up in sales, and I'm sure, you rising the ranks too of the Canadian Army, you've seen the leaders that rule with an iron fist. And that always, I feel like empathy will always take you farther in the end than the one that forces and rules by an iron fist. And it just doesn't, you'll never have that safe zone, so you'll never have the credibility with your team, and then you'll never be able to develop them. And a lot of times when you rule with an iron fist, you kind of show that you don't want to develop them. You want to maintain the leadership. You don't want them to go on and do bigger and better things. But, being a leader, one of the things that I went through in training with Restaurant Technologies is when you become a leader, and this is really hard as any good salesperson, because when you're a strong seller or a strong performer or really a strong athlete, it's all about you usually, right? You're always getting all the recognition. You're getting all the accolades, and it feels good. It feels good to get that recognition, the praise, the constant spotlight. But when you flip to being a leader, and this is the same for almost any field, it doesn't become about you anymore. It actually is 0% about you. It's a lonely place to be, but it's 100% about them and their success. And you have to be really good, I really feel like, at giving praise. And that was one of the things I struggled with the most going into it, was how to give good praise and give good feedback. And it's not, a lot of leaders, and I've had leaders, and I was a leader when I did this early on, I would always say, "Oh, great job." And that feels good for a little bit, but it doesn't come off as genuine. When someone says, "Oh, good job," I remember I look back when people told me good job, I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'm doing a good job," right? But it doesn't make you feel that good.
Yeah.
There's a proper way to praise. And I really think you have to sit them down, not sit them down, excuse me. I was about to go on a reprimand, but when you praise, you want to do it in public in front of everybody, but you also want to tell them how whatever they did, whatever you're praising them for, made you feel.
Yeah.
So instead of saying good job or great job, say, here's an example, like great job, Mike. That was really well done. I really appreciate the effort you put into that, because that continued effort will lead to more ongoing success. So I love seeing that. Please keep that up. And that little extra 10 seconds you spend to be genuine and be real and explain on how their behaviors made you feel will drive more of those good behaviors instead of the traditional, "Hey, great job on that." Because you can easily, as a leader, get caught into constantly saying, "Hey, great job." And then eventually it just falls on deaf ears and it doesn't make, you know what I mean? So you really have to be genuine with them.
So, yeah, well, all great nuggets there. So I want to boomerang back, because I got two points to add on there from my perspective. And you were talking about ruling with the iron fist versus being genuine. And the thing that I always come to is like the guy who rules with iron fist will, yeah, sure, when the going gets tough, people will follow them just because they're basically coerced to following them. Yeah. But the person who's empathetic and leads them through those means will actually, people will want to follow them in those rough times and actually get the organization through the rough time.
100%. Right? 100%. So, that is gold right there. And you know, some of the good feedback I got from my team is, and this is something that I built up for a couple of years, is, you know, none of them had a fear of failing, which I didn't want anyone to have a fear of failing. But it was really interesting. The feedback I got from them is they almost felt bad letting me down, and I was like, guys, you're not letting me down. But I think when you really think about that, if they believe in what you're doing so strongly that they almost feel bad if they let you down, I think that's a really good place to be as a leader, because I think you have their complete buy-in, and you can lead them to anything, and they're gonna follow you. And you know, it's a really special place to be as a leader, because you always get the truth, but then they'll always follow you. Because as a leader, you know, like we talked about just on our conversation for the podcast, you have to drive change. And change, like you said, it's only constant. And it's the only constant we have in life is change. And that's what separates the great leaders from the good leaders, are the ones that have enough buy-in and enough equity and credibility with their team to drive change.
Oh, absolutely. And the second thing I was going to mention was, it's a little bit of a story, but I'll try to shorten it up quick here. But we had a major exercise on my base there, probably about a year ago now. And the only thing I ever, the funny part is the only thing I ever did for it was say no to something. And that spun a lot of other things that happened and stuff like this. So the exercise went on, and then a bunch of my guys were involved providing help and support to the exercise. And then at the end, I got brought into an auditorium, and the brigade commander who was on the ground, whose brigade was exercising, presented me with the coin to say thanks for all the support that my organization gave him. I was like, wow, this is funny. The only thing I actually did with this exercise is say no. So back to your point about, you know, it's not about me, but about them. So what I had done was we actually had the coin mounted, and then during the presentation, a gathering for my squadron, I went and presented it to the sergeant major, whose role is basically represents the troops and everybody. And I said, all right, this coin isn't, you know, I told everybody the story. I said, it's pretty ironic for me to receive this coin when the only thing I did was say no. So I'm going to present it to the sergeant major so it can stay here with the squadron, because you, the members of the squadron, are actually ones who deserve this coin, right?
Yeah.
Right. As I know, many other people would like pocket the coin and add it to their collection. I think I actually only have 2 in mine.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, and that goes back to that thing is, I mean, no matter how you get there, it always has to stay about them, right? And I think if you keep it about them, that'll resonate so much more than them seeing their leader get the spotlight. Because you're only as good as your weakest link, and you're only as good as your team, right? So you have to, you know, it has to come back to them in every shape or fashion. And that's one of the things I had here. As I was thinking about some of the things that I enjoy doing with my team to kind of drive change and drive success, is celebrate. And I think in business in general, I mean, we do a great job of celebrating at Restaurant Technologies, but you can never celebrate your successes enough. And I've been at companies that it just think success is an expectation, and so we don't celebrate it, and then it makes the failure sting even more. Yeah. And I've been at companies like Restaurant Technologies where I'm at today, and we do an excellent job of celebrating success. We try to make it part of our culture where, you know, if you're doing the right things, we're going to celebrate as a team. So that team member is going to get the recognition in front of his peers, but we're also going to enjoy the moment of being very successful, because business, military, every aspect of life as leadership, your team is going to go through struggles, and you're going to have your fair share of lumps and your fair share of failures, but you need to celebrate success to continue to drive the good behaviors that'll make that repetitive. I'm not going to say you're not going to lose, right? You're always going to take your losses. Absolutely. But I think if you focus on your wins and you don't dwell on your losses, celebrating really helps that and drives more of that good behavior.
No, that's 100%. Like I always, a couple of things I always say is like, as a leader, you know, you're the reason for the failure, but your people are the reason for successes, right?
I love that. I'm going to steal that, by the way.
Go ahead.
I'll quote you on it. I swear I'll quote you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a little bit more better way to say it, but I got a cold coming on, so I'm not 100% tonight.
All good. I'll quote you. I got you.
It's all good. And the second thing was, oh God, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, you were talking about successes and celebrating successes, and it blows my mind that organizations that don't celebrate success, because if you don't celebrate what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve, then how do you know what it is?
Absolutely.
Right. So how do you know you've gotten there at one point? I'm not saying you're at the end line, because obviously you got to keep going. Business needs to keep running. But if you know, oh, we're going to celebrate this win because this is a big win. Now everybody knows what it is. Now they can strive for it again and again and again. Whereas if you never celebrate it and everybody like, well, are we there? I don't know. No, we'll just keep plugging away.
We're doing okay, guys. Just keep going. Just keep going.
We're heads above water slightly.
That's got burnout written all over it.
Oh, it does, right?
Yeah, and it's a cheesy comparison, but this is a good comparison if you really think about it. If you think about like when you have kids and they first start to walk, the one thing you don't do when they first make that first step to walk, and they always fall, they never just get right up and walk, is not congratulate them, clap your hands, say, yeah, good job. That constant encouragement all the way until they walk is kind of the same thing that can be applied to business. Is you have to have that constant encouragement while that kid's slowly getting up. Maybe they're not walking yet, but you just, even if they fall, you're clapping and you're like, no, you're doing the right things. You're going to get there.
You're on the track.
Exactly. And even at a young kid's age, I feel like at an infant's age there, where they're starting to walk, that constant clapping and excitement gets them to do it again and again and again. And then eventually they start walking. And I know it's a kind of a cheesy comparison to business or even the military ranks, but it does take that constant encouragement to continue to do the right things to be successful, because, being successful isn't easy in any shape of life. And I think having the constant encouragement along the way, so celebrating your small wins and celebrating the macro wins, but also keeping the encouragement and optimism up while you're failing as well, because you're going to take your lumps along the way. And that was one of the things I put down. I was making a few show notes here for the show, and always staying completely optimistic and infusing your team with positivity. It's so easy to be negative. If you cut on any commercial nowadays in TV or anything, like cut on the radio, cut on the TV, every commercial is telling you you're bad and you do this right now. It's not all bad. I think you need to celebrate along the way. And I think you have to stay optimistic in the face of adversity and stay very positive. And that keeps the team's morale up. Because in business and anything really, like I said, you're going to take your lumps, but you have to stay optimistic and positive throughout the process. And part of that also is with the downs and the ups, with the positivity, you have to stay even keel. And so when things are going real bad, good leaders don't push the panic button. You stay very even keel. And so it creates a consistency that your team can expect. And then and that also helps create that safe zone I was talking about, is having that consistent way about yourself when things are going really bad or wrong, just as they are when they're successful. You don't get down, right? You have to just find a way out, and that consistency really helps the team feel real comfortable around you.
Oh, that's 100% all that. Two things to add from my side is that you're talking about consistency. What makes the difference between good organizations and great organizations is, in my mind anyway, the great organizations are ones that do those basic things, but always they do them every single day, those basic steps. And just like you're saying, you're using the analogy of clapping for when the baby's starting to walk and stuff like that. Well, That's basic steps, right? You keep doing those day in, day out, those things, those core basic steps day in, day out. That's what makes the difference between a good organization and a great one.
Oh, 100%. I could not agree more. And consistency is such a big factor in any business's success nowadays.
All realms of it too, right? Like just consistency in delivering your product, for consistency in your sales team, consistency as you as a leader and the message you're giving to your people and your attitude towards them. It's pretty easy to make it seem like a small thing of just be consistent, but no, it's a huge endeavor.
It's a incredibly hard thing to be consistent in, if you will, but to have that as part of your culture is that consistency. And it starts, and stuff like that, like those macro items always start from the top down. Mm-hmm. And if it's something you're not driving as a leader, you can't expect that behavior out of your team. And like just like clapping for that baby every single step makes the world of difference to them. And once they expect that and they know what to expect when they start doing the right things like that, then they do more of it, and then they're walking and they're running, and you encourage them every step of the way. And you also have to be able to, on the flip side of the coin, you have to be able to give candid feedback, and that needs to be part of your culture as a leader. Is feedback is gold, right? And I think there's a lot of leaders out there today that don't give enough feedback, and I think there's also just as many leaders that probably aren't that good at giving feedback. And listen, I'm not the expert in it, but I think there's a right and wrong way to give feedback. So if you have to give negative feedback or you have to reprimand someone, there's that. I think a lot of managers or leaders go into that little sandwich where they give good feedback, then you give the bad feedback that you really want to give, and then you end it with good feedback to try to make the person feel good. And that's terrible. I think that's a really bad idea.
I'm not a huge proponent of that either.
Yeah, the sandwich. I feel like the sandwich won't get you very far as a leader. But
no.
One of the things you can do is if you need to drive change in an individual, not as a team, you can sit that individual down, let them know what they're doing, what you're seeing, reiterate that they're a valuable part of the team, and that you know that they can do better, and that you expect better, but that they have better in them, and they're not giving you 100%, and that you're encouraging them to do better and offering a hand as a resource to help improve, and then also reiterate their value and how they make you feel as a leader, as being part of their team. Like, hey, you're a really important part of this team. I know you have more in you. I know you can give more. And I think to be successful here, those are the expectations, and you're an incredible asset to this team, and I want to see you improve and do better. And saying those kind of things will resonate much more than saying, hey, great job today. You did all these things good. You're really screwed up on this thing. You got to improve on that. But hey, you're still doing really good. That sandwich just never comes off, because we've all gotten it before, right? Yeah. It's like, well, did he really even mean any of the other stuff he said? Or
I'd come out of that meeting and be like, hey, I'm a superstar.
I know, and it doesn't drive the change you need, because change is constant, right? And then you're not going to be able to drive change without giving good feedback.
The one thing I would say, though, it's definitely better than not saying anything at all.
Yeah. True. Very true.
I don't know. I've come across it before in the past, and it's just like, what do you mean this person's been doing this and no one's ever talked to them and told them wrong? I'm like, do you guys not realize that they're doing it because they think they're doing the right thing, but meanwhile you're all complaining about it here in front of me? And they're just like, oh. I'm like, yeah, no, not oh. Go there. Tell them what they're doing wrong. Tell them what their expectations are.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. Exactly, right?
Yeah. I mean, as a leader, you owe it to your team to make sure that they know where they stand with you at all times. You can't have that mystery of what is my manager, what is my boss, what does my leader think of me. If they're already in that territory, then they're going to start heading in the wrong direction really quick.
Yeah.
I think you have to just be candid with your team, and that starts with, like us, having that safe zone with everybody. It opens up that dialogue of being comfortable being candid, and I think the team members will be candid with each other when you create that environment, but also it creates an environment where you can be candid with your team, and everyone knows where they stand. And so if there's none of that mystery, and it's a really bad place to be when you don't know how your manager, boss, supervisor, leader feels about you. I mean, that's really bad. I mean, that you're asking for disengagement. Usually asking them to fall off, right?
Yeah, you're asking for like self-imploding, right? Like everything's just self-destruct because it goes back to management of expectations, communication, all these core things that make an organization run on an internal basis.
100%.
We kind of went on this huge discussion about leadership in general. I'd like to kind of swing back about to discuss, directing you as a younger leader. With subordinates who are older, and obviously to me it seems like you got a good team going there, you have a good thing going, but I wouldn't say it's always been peaches and roses type thing. So what are some of the challenges specifically regarding to leading a team that's predominantly older than you, and how did you overcome them in your time?
Yeah, so in business, and I think especially in sales, anyone that's working for a small to medium-sized company out there, you're going to experience change. And so whether you change ownership groups, whether you're private equity owned or whether you're family owned, and another family member comes in to be a leader above you, the most challenging thing to do is to be able to roll with that change and drive that change, still get buy-in, and still stay successful and meet all your goals while you're at it. And that's one of the biggest, most challenging things that I think any leader will face in any facet is rolling with the change at hand, but being able to drive the positive results through change. And I think a lot of the things that kind of we talked about will help you maintain that stability. And I think once you have the buy-in that you need, once you've created that safe zone, it's so much easier to drive change once you have that safe zone than it is where, maybe you're a new leader and then change just happened and you don't have that buy-in. Well, now you're scrambling and you're almost asking. And you can't ever ask. You've got to leading through positivity and keeping the positive momentum will keep the ears open. And I think you can help push through anything. So, Restaurant Technologies, we're private equity owned, like most medium-sized companies. And, every time if there's a change in ownership, there's always that angst of what's going on, who's going where, who's buying us. And a lot of times when you're private equity owned, it's another private equity firm, it's business as usual, but it just creates that angst, right? And so I think you just need to be able to drive the message of focus on what you can control and let the results fall where they may. And I think if you maintain the focus on your world, what you can control, and only keep that as your guiding light, that'll drive a lot more success. Because as soon as I call it water cooler talk, as soon as the water cooler talk gets cranked up in any environment of your company, and everyone, if you're out there working for a company, if you have the water cooler talk going on, it is toxic. And so if you can minimize that by staying positive, celebrating wins, but also keeping your team focused on what they can control. And that by doing that, you're focusing on what you can control as a leader. And I think they see that and it resonates. And but yeah, it's driving change when change is needed, and that's the hardest thing. And a lot of times change is going to happen, and for a lot of organizations, it's out of your hands. And so it comes back to, okay, don't worry about all the external noise. Focus on what you can control. And as long as you do that and do that well, we'll be successful, right? And I think that's a good message.
Oh, I love that part. Focus on what you can control, because I see it pretty well every day.
Yep.
Everybody's worried about, stressing about, getting all upset about things that are completely outside of our scope. I'm just like out of our control. Like, guys, actually, funny story. I had my entire squadron together for a town hall because there's a lot of things people were upset about, and this, that, and the other thing. And I kind of explained the way the groundwork is and why policies were the way they were and stuff like this. And I said, all right, so this is probably about 8 months ago now, about 8 months ago. And I said, I can't remember exactly what people were upset about, but it was a really strategic level thing that they were upset about. I said, all right, guys, so if you guys want me to change this is what's going to happen. I'm going to quit the Army. I'm going to run and become because the conservative party, one of the political parties here in Canada, we're having a leadership race. I'm like, so I'm going to run in that, become the leader, and then you and 15 million of your closest friends will vote me in prime minister at the next election, and then I can make that change for you. Sound good?
Absolutely. And you know what I love about what you just said? I love it's transparency, right? And so literally, like, though you're joking, you're going through the process and you're just being transparent about it. And
it's total truth.
It is. I mean, that's how you roll.
Yeah, so it did get a good number of laughs and chuckles, but then people clicked in too. I'm like, no, this is exactly what needs to happen. I need to become prime minister to make a law change, and I may or may not be able to do it in one tender.
Exactly. You gotta roll. The change is coming. You gotta roll with it. And as a leader, keep them focused on what they can control. Focus on what you can control. And I think that's going to set you up for success when you're going through any change. And I love though you're joking, it's that level of transparency that you need with your team as well. Because I think transparency builds credibility. I think it helps build trust. And so, anything that comes down from my leaders or our leadership team, executive team, even the board, I try to be as transparent as possible with my team. I don't want them to think that I know something about the company that they don't. That's silly. And I think, you need to continue to be as transparent as possible. And usually, literally use those words like, hey, I want to be as transparent as possible with you guys, and here's what's going on. And I think that breaks down the walls and makes them feel better about any change that's coming and how you're going to lead through it.
So just in the term realm of transparency, just for me to be transparent with everybody out there, I am not planning on running for political office anytime soon. That is actually technically illegal for a serving member of the Canadian Armed Forces. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that before I start getting my supervisor knocking at my door.
Hey, Scott, if you retire, I will help campaign. I'm in.
That's interesting. American funding a Canadian political campaign. Sounds good to me.
I work in the private sector, so I'm good.
That's awesome. George, believe it or not, we're actually buttoned up on time.
Are we really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that was quick. I felt like it went by quick. That was cool.
So we had a great conversation here. I do got one last question for you, which I do ask all my guests.
Sure.
And to you, what makes a great leader?
What makes a great leader? I think if I could say one thing, it's leading through positivity. And I think if you stay positive, it's going to drive a more fun atmosphere for your team, as I think you need to keep things fun. I think staying positive all the time will drive that fun atmosphere that you need. It'll help you celebrate success. It'll help the transparency. It'll help the team be more candid with each other. But I think a lot of it is just staying positive and optimistic. I mean, it's so easy when you look around today to just be knocked down. But I think if you are overly positive to outweigh a lot of the things that knock you down. And look, I'm in sales, and in sales, you're going to get knocked down every day. The last thing you need is to, come to your leader and then also have a similar, knockdown. But I think just lead through positivity, and then also encourage. One last thing here is also encourage people self-developing themselves and finding out answers themselves. So not always giving out the answer, but if someone comes to you and they need something and they have a question about something, ask a question back and kind of guide them to the answer so they find it themselves. Don't just give out the answer all the time. And then lastly, I encourage, I do this thing with my team. This is something practical that any leader can do, is I call it a whiteboard session. So you called it a town hall, or maybe something similar, but we do whiteboards where if we're as a team facing an obstacle, I'll get the team together. We get a whiteboard out. We don't have any boundaries on any solution, and we brainstorm ideas. And 99% of the best ideas, actually I should probably say 100% of the best ideas, come from the team, not me. Absolutely. And so when you create that environment, let them whiteboard, let them do their thing. It's such a complicated, there's so many topics on leadership. You could get into the weeds on any of it, but just having this talk with you has been great, Scott. I can't thank you enough for having me on the show, and I think we got a lot of good content here, and really fun stuff, Scott.
No, it's been a hoot, man. I might have to get you back on again.
I'm down. I mean, it went by so quick. I'm always down.
Awesome. For all the listeners out there, you can grab all the show notes for this show at movingforwardleadership.com/podcast/Penyak, as in George's last name, just like all the guests I do. George, thank you for coming out. It's been a hoot. We're gonna have to talk again. Maybe we'll have to get you back because this has just been too much fun. For all the listeners out there, just like any other interview show, I'll have my key takeaways in about 3 seconds of your time, right after this moment. All right. Thanks again, George. Actually, George, before I do let it go, do you have anything last? Like I normally give my interviewees a chance to do a shameless plug, but you got nothing really a shameless plug. But do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to impart on to the audience out there before we kick out here?
Yeah, absolutely. I love communicating through LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn, if you just search George Penyak, there's not many of me out there. It's George. Last name's Penyak, just like it sounds, Penyak. And so search me on LinkedIn, link up with me. I love meeting, engaging with leaders and employees of all facets here. So no, that's all I got. I really appreciate the platform. I love your podcast, Scott, and I literally can't thank you enough for the time to let me come on the show and talk about leadership and some of the things we'd love to talk about. So, Scott, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no worries. For the audience, again, I'll throw in George's LinkedIn link in the show notes. And George, I haven't talked to you about this yet because I normally do it offline, but I think it's actually a good roll in to finish off the show. Is that I invite all my guests to my Moving Forward Leadership Mastermind group on Facebook. So if you're interested, you can feel free to join that, and then that'll give the opportunity for the audience to join in and discuss leadership with you and me and every other guest that's joined us since I started this thing. So
100%.
I'm in.
I'm in.
All right. Thought you would be. All right, we're going to wrap it up, and stand by for audience for my key takeaways. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that show there with George. I definitely had a great time chat with him, as you probably picked up, and we seem to have a lot in common, and it was definitely a good conversation, which could have lasted a lot longer. Anyway, here's my 3 key takeaways from this episode with George. The first one is being vulnerable, and you heard out of the gate there in an interview how when he was vulnerable with his subordinates, he was able to bridge that gap and get them to open up to him, and that's really key. And you have to show your people that, no, you don't have all the answers. You're not Superman. You're not invincible. You're a human being just like them, and they will open up to you. So just keep that in mind when you get into an organization. And the second thing is kind of dovetailing off being vulnerable, is that when people feel safe, that's when they're going to open up to you with the truth, right? And you see this, you can see this all the time. If you're truly talking to your people and you're out and about and you're having conversations with them, if they feel safe, they will let you know what is wrong, what is going on wrong, and what's going on right as well. So just keep that in mind, okay? And establish a place of work where people feel safe to tell you the truth. And that will enable you to get it from them. And then the final thing is always staying positive and optimistic. That's one of the core jobs as a leader, being perpetually optimistic and positive. And I'll kind of let you in on something I do. And that is every day I say that when people ask me how I'm doing today, I say outstanding. And some days I'm not outstanding, to be truthful, but optimism is a perpetual multiplier. And as soon as I say outstanding, if that person is having not such an outstanding day themselves, it helps them alleviate that pressure. And all of a sudden their day gets a little bit better. So, yeah, sure, maybe white lying or putting a mask on something, but it's still showing optimism and positivity, which then it breeds and it can be intoxicating to people. So just keep that in mind. All right, so hope you enjoyed the show today. And thanks again to George for coming on out. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, as always, keep pushing, keep trying, keep moving forward.